Happy Friday, happy Friday, happy Friday. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are watching me. Thank you very much for joining us on this exciting topic. And thank you very much to my team for putting this together. I've been forced to do this, but hopefully you're going to learn a thing or two from me. So I think before we start, I'll just give a few minutes for those who are joining. Francis, thank you for joining. Padmont, thank you for joining us. Ransford, thank you for joining us. I hope you're ready to negotiate, or if you're in the middle of, looking for work, or probably you're in the middle of negotiating, for potential new job. And hopefully these tips would help you as much as possible. So I guess we can start, and then hopefully others will join us. And then obviously we can carry on with it. So good evening one more time. My name is Genevieve. Nanajwa, thanks for joining us. My name is Genevieve. I'm one of the recruiters or an HR practitioner at Rec Training Services Limited, which is an HR company. And I'm here today to talk about how to negotiate your salary like a pro. I'm sure we've all been there before, one way or the other, whether through doing an internship, being offered a job, and whatsoever. So it probably isn't a new thing to you. But anyway, we thought it would be a good idea to share these tips here, purely because we get a lot of questions from candidates. Jen, this is what I've been offered. What can I go in with? Jen, this is what I'm being paid. What do you think about it? And always my first question to everybody is, did you really prepare to go in and negotiate, or did you actually prepare properly for the interview, especially in the area of how much do you want to be paid, or what is your expectation? Which, as a recruiter, we always ask, even on behalf of clients when we're recruiting for them, or internally when we were doing our own recruitment. And it's funny, a lot of it that I tend to get is, the company has their own structure, so you can make me an offer. No, I don't want to make you an offer, because then it means that you haven't actually researched what you want to be paid or what you are valued at. Judah, thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us on the negotiating your salary as a pro. So as I was saying, you as an individual, yes, the company would have their salary structure, but then on your part, what have you actually done on your part? Because they've done their research. They know what they want to pay for a particular role. They know what they want to pay for an internship opportunity. They know what they want to pay for a senior executive role, a junior level role. But then the question I want to pose to you is, have you ever gone into an interview where you've not actually researched properly into what the salary or what the role is paid or what you are valued at? And that is something that a lot of us miss. And, a lot of people ask me, Jen, but I want $1 million in my account. Well, we all do. But unfortunately, we've got to cut our coats according to our size. You've got to be competitive with the market. In as much as we want to be paid, $1 million in our accounts is not realistic or is not feasible. Again, it might depend on the level of the role that you're going for. But what I would say to you is that before you even go into an interview, if you are job hunting, if you are thinking of changing jobs, which will come, if you are looking for an internship opportunity where perhaps you're looking to be paid a stipend or whatsoever, just do your research, because the company have done their research. They've cushioned themselves. They've gone through a competitor's analysis. They've done their salary structure or their compensation structure. So they know what they want to pay. And they know what the market is paying in terms of the people within their industry or within the same industry that they work in. So they know what they want to pay. They know what they want to offer. So what are you doing on your side to make sure that you are also remaining competitive And because they are employers of choice, you also have to be an employee of choice. I know a lot of people say, there are no jobs, Jen, let me just take this, let me take that. No, 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 no. Believe you me, there are jobs. There are jobs. And if you're going to go in, you've got to stand out. You've got to be prepared. In as much as you're preparing for the interview, you also need to prepare the aspect of the interview in terms of what they're going to pay, because they're going to ask you. So the first thing I would suggest to you, if you are job hunting, if you're currently negotiating, or you've been to an interview and you potentially know that they may be calling you, or just to prepare yourself, because sometimes you need to armor yourself, till it comes, and then obviously you come out and then you do what you have to do. So what I would say to you is that do your research. And when I talk about doing research, I'm talking about what is the industry that you are potentially being interviewed or you are interested in going for in terms of the role that you are applying for. So do your research in that area, that particular industry. Find who the competitors of that business is. Find out a lot of places. There's Glassdoor. You can find tons and tons of information on research in terms of what the market is paying for that particular role. Again, when I used to be an employee, when I was an employee, just to test whether I'm, in terms of my value and experiences, I'll just go and apply for a job, every quarter or every year, just to see if I'm marketable or not, because I've done my research and I know what I'm worth. So then I'll go into the interview and then I'll state what it is. So the first thing I would say to you is that research into the market that you're going to go in, or you have an interest in, or you've been for an interview and you're potentially going to offer the job. You've gotten more information from the interview. So research into those places. Like I mentioned, Glassdoor is one of the places that you can research into that. One of the places that we downplay a lot is within our networks. You must know an HR person somewhere, or even within your networks, there might be people who are working in that industry that perhaps you can tap their knowledge into that. Last week, I had one of my girlfriends call me and say, Jen, I'm going for this potential interview within, the medical field. Do you have any idea? And I said, well, I don't, but I have a couple of people within that industry, so I will just ask them and let you know. And I did that, So you have to make sure that obviously you do your research well, you use extensively your network. I can't downplay that, I can't say much of that. So use your network as much as you can. Look at what the current market is paying, as I mentioned before, or even in the industry, what is going on in the industry in terms of news, articles, or in terms of trends that is going on within that industry. That would give you an indication of, what potentially is out there. And by the way, if you have questions, please pop them in the chat box. We'll answer them as we're going along. So basically, you do your research. You extensively ask other people around you within your networks. Make sure you may have one or two people who may be in the same role, or not necessarily within the same industry, but maybe in the same role in another industry. And sometimes they are not too far apart. So you utilize your networks, people who are within the similar industries in that particular industry that you want to go into. And then make sure that you have an idea what it is. Now, that's the first step in terms of research that you're going to do. So you use the market research of what the role is paying. You do your own research within your networks and what have you. And then obviously there are people that also are within our mentors. We may have one or two mentors who may know one or two things about the role or about what the industry is paying. And perhaps they could also be one of the people that you can also, tap into with regards to that. So that is what I would say is the first thing you would want to do. The next thing you would want to do, hi, Jonathan, welcome. Hi, it's Gabby, welcome. So the next thing you want to do after the research really is just really to do your homework. And when I talk about your homework, it's time for you to sit down. Okay. Now you're sitting down, not to really stare in the air, but you're sitting down to make sure that you're doing your calculations with regards to one, your reoccurring or recurring expenses that you have. Okay. So you put that down because obviously remember you've done your research, you know what the market is paying, you know what you are currently on or what you'd like to be paid for that particular role because you've done that research. Then you sit down and look at your regular expenses. Okay. And like I said, we all want to be paid $1 million, but the reality is that, if the market is paying 2,000 or 15,000 Ghana cedis, you're not going to get the $15 million. So you've got to sit down and look at what your recurring expenses are. And if you are able to put that together, then you add a little bit more to it. So it could be anything within the range of about 20 to 50% of what the total expenses is. Francis, I'll come to you in a minute. I know about the UK, we always publish that, so that's no problem, but I'll come to you in a minute. So then you then do your expenses, your regular expenses, and then you add a little bit more on it as I mentioned, between 20 to 30% with regards to that. And that should really cater for like emergencies or your savings and what have you. And worst case scenario, if you get offered the role and it's around that amount, and obviously you want to negotiate or they ask you to sort of consider a few other things, that is like your little tapping pool area that you can sort of reduce your expectations. So you're more or less like, negotiating, going back and forth with them, but then you have a cushion, a window, and that's where the 20 to 30% I'm talking about is. Sorry, 20 to 50% I'm talking about is. So you can then negotiate in that area, but that means that your recurring expenses are still intact. Where you're playing with it is between the extra percentage that you've added onto it. So then you do that. It means that you're fully armored. You've done your research. You've sat down. You've done your expenses. You've compared the two. You've added the percentage to it. Then obviously now you're ready to go in and negotiate. So you get into the interview. And then obviously you're ready because the company is also ready in terms of the structure of what they want to plot, where they want to plot you in. Because if a company has a structure, they would then obviously do their 2 yearly or every 2 years, they would do their salary reviews or salary structures where they have to compare it with the current market. So you go in, you've done your research, you have an idea what your minimum or your maximum is going to be. Now, don't be fixated too much on that amount, okay? Because there are certain things that perhaps you would consider, okay? Which will be a cost to the business, but it would be a benefit to you. So things like medical health, things like leave allowance, depending on the level of your role within the business. Things like loans, things like salary advance, things like, as I mentioned, medicals. Obviously, remember the 20 to 50% we talked about was to cushion for any of those ones. So if you go in then obviously the offer is made where that is already covered for by the business. Your fuel may be covered for by the business. Your transportation cost may be covered by the business. Meals at work may be covered by the business. Then, you know where to play with, but at least you know that you've done your homework well by doing the research and you have an idea what you're dealing with. So you go into it, and usually the first question or through the interview, what would ask you is, so what are your expectations? Okay. Now, normally the expectations, it's not really to catch you out. Honestly, it's not. It's just for us to also know that we can afford you, because the truth of the matter is, it's not everybody that can afford you. Okay, we've got to be realistic with that. It's not every company that can afford you. They could be at different stages of the business. Potentially they want good talent, but they may not be able to afford it. But maybe they may take somebody who's a bit not too experienced, but then they spend time in training that person. Some could also afford it, or sometimes they even have a budget. And if you are that good, they would then consider it and go beyond, the salary structure that they have, because to every salary structure, there are exceptions. Obviously, there's a maximum cap that they cannot go beyond. But even when they go up to the maximum cap, Beyond that could be given to you in terms of bonuses on a monthly basis, just to bring you into that salary structure. And in 2 years' time, when they do it and they up it, then obviously you go up with regards to that. So go in, look at it holistically. And the first question they will probably ask you, or through the interview, they'll ask you, so how much do you want to be paid? This is what I would say to people. You can give a range. Now, you know what you want to be paid because you've done your homework, you've done research, you've done your expenses, so you have an idea what you want to be paid. You can state a minimum, absolute minimum that you would not consider the role, and leave the maximum open, or you can state the range with a minimum and a maximum. However, you can add on to say that, you would rather they make you an offer of the whole compensation together, because then that could change your mind with regards to the monetary aspect, because the non-monetary aspect could supplement some of the expenses that you've already listed. So then it gives you room, and especially because if it's a business that you really want to get into, but they cannot afford you, but they have very good benefits, maybe they would offer you shares, they can give you some allowances. Like I mentioned, medicals is covered for. If you're going on leave, they might give you leave allowance to go for the leave and stuff like that. So you don't put yourself in a box. What you do is you state your minimum, you state your maximum, and then you tell them that obviously you are flexible with regards to the whole compensation structure, because then that would then determine whether you would want to accept it. Because once they make you an offer, you don't immediately accept, but then you go back and look at what you've put down, look at what is in the offer, and then obviously you can then do your mathematics to say, okay, I'm going to accept it or I'm not going to accept it. Now, sometimes people gradually accept the role with the hopes that they would get an increment or whatsoever. I would strongly encourage everybody not to do that, especially hoping that you get an increment. The most important thing is that look at the offer, look at what you've put down. Where does the non-monetary bit fit that you can take out of your expenses or the expectations that you're looking at, so that at least you find a balance, and then the two of you would then agree back and forth. You can make a counter offer. They can come back to you, and then you carry on from there. So I would strongly suggest give the range, and then tell them in addition that, you would rather they make you an offer, and then obviously you can then come back to them with regards to that. Don't go in and say, I'm okay with whatever you offer me. No, you're not okay with whatever we offer you, because I can bet you my bottom dollar that if we offer you what they would offer you, and you gradually take it, as soon as you step in there, a couple of weeks later, you start looking for something else, because then the expenses that you have is the amount of money you're being paid is not going to cover at least the recurring ones. So I would suggest that do not make that mistake of saying to the panel, myself, somebody else, a potential recruiter, a company that you're being recruited for, that, just make me an offer, or, make me an offer. If you use that word, make me an offer, and they come back and obviously you decline the offer, you've actually gone against your word. So it is better you are transparent from the very beginning to say, listen, currently this is what I'm on. Per my research work and stuff, I'm actually expecting 5,000 Ghana cedis or 5,000 pounds. I would leave the maximum open. However, I'm open to negotiations, because I believe the whole package would have some non-monetary aspects out of it. So then at least you've given them that room for them to be able to come back to you to make the offer. And then at that point, if it's not worth your while, you can decline the offer with the reasons why you're declining that offer. And then that's what you've got to do. Please don't be afraid, because everybody knows their worth. And like I mentioned, we all cannot be paid $1 million, because if the market is not if the role is not paying on the market as the most employer of choice, then in terms of the amount you're asking for, then obviously it won't be ideal for them to be able to do that. So do your research first. Sit down and do your expenses, the regular expenses. Add a bit more to it. Be open when you get into the interview, or when you're in the middle of the negotiations, look critically at the non-monetary things. Like I mentioned, there will be some shares somewhere, there will be some allowances somewhere, there is medicals in there, there's leave allowance in there, and what have you. So that could potentially cushion you with regards to, some of the things that you've stated on there. So that is what I would say to you. If you really have to negotiate as a pro, do your homework, because the company has done their homework. Don't go in blindly and say, pay me whatever you feel I'm worth, or match me against the salary structure. Yes, they can match you against the salary structure. But then if you are also confident, and once you've done your homework and you know what the market is paying for an HR director, you state it as such. And then what I would suggest is that do not bump your salary, because at one point in time, you could be found out. So don't bump your salary. Be as transparent as possible. I have seen people where they've gone for entry-level roles, but they've gotten double what they've asked for, because the client saw the value in them. The market was paying more than what they are expecting or what they are currently on, and they've been offered the role beyond their imaginations. I've seen people go for internships where the stipend, if it's 600, it's been doubled to 1,002. And all because, they prepared very well. They stated what they wanted. The company looked at their value that they are bringing on, additional experiences that they have, that they know they would value from the business, for the business, and has given them the right amount with regards to that. I've seen people where, they've been paid 20% less than what they were on, but then they had some shares offered to them. So they decided to go for that. They had some extra allowances, risk allowance, and all the others as part of it. And then obviously they took the job. I've seen people where they've gone in where a lot more is important for them when it comes to the non-monetary stuff, especially those who have families, where they know medical coverage medicals is covered for by covered for him, her, their spouse, and their children, where they feel, it's worth me going here. There's flexibility when it comes to hybrid working. Now, we all know what COVID has done to us. A lot of people are in hybrid options, where they do 2-3 days in the office, or 3 days at home, 2 days in the office. It's here to stay. Some people like that because if they are family people, they can get time to spend with the kids. They can get time to also do other things while still working at home. So that is why I was saying that don't box yourself and focus too much on the actual money, but rather consider the whole compensation package right from the, right from the non-monetary aspect and the monetary aspect. So that is what I wanted to share with you when it comes to obviously negotiating your salaries as a pro. Do your homework. The client has done their homework. So you also have to do your homework so that when the two of you meet, you armor yourself, you get in there. And there's nothing better than preparation. When you're prepared, you go in with some confidence that, you walk in with the vibe. You walk in and you know what you're worth. So you say exactly what, you are expecting, but then be very open and be flexible with regards to that. So that is what I really wanted to share. Francis has a question. I worked in the UK before. When recruiters published jobs, they added salaries for each specific roles. Why not the same? Francis, it's interesting you asked this question. It's a question that I belong to a lot of HR platforms, and we've been communicating and talking about this thing. It's a culture thing, unfortunately. But also in the UK, they are legally obliged to do so. So it's a legal requirement by the government as part of the act. So they don't have any choice. Because I remember when I was working in the UK, every year we worked with other competitor hotels to ask what they were paying in order for us to then look internally what we can offer to make ourselves an employer of choice. So I completely understand your question, but I think in Ghana, we are not there yet. We will get there. At the moment, there's quite a lot, tons and tons of information, especially on salaries. If you Google them through different places, you would get them. If you network through different people, through your mentors, through people who are within the similar roles and stuff. There is something about Ghana with people keeping their salaries to their chest. I don't know what it is. But to answer your question, it's just because in the UK, they're legally obliged to do so. And a lot of the multinationals who are even operating in Ghana do publish them. And basically that's the reason why. But I would also say there are some companies in Ghana who actually do publish it, so maybe not majority, but some of them do publish it. And obviously, the ones that they don't publish, my thing is, if you are interested in the role, go for it. What do you lose? There's nothing you're going to lose. You would actually have the power to decline or to accept the role when you're offered, because you would have done your homework. You know exactly what your role is valued at in terms of your skill set, your experience, and also what you're currently earning and stuff like that. So that is what I would say to you, Francis, Francis, with regards to that. Yes, we will be pushing for that. I think eventually if it becomes a law, in Ghana, then obviously, they don't have a choice, but rather to publish it. So let's see what happens. But again, like I mentioned, they're legally obliged to do that. But again, it also is a good thing, because at the end of the day, people can then decide, what, I'm not even going to apply for this role because, it's below what I'm currently on. However, maybe you may look at it and think, okay, actually, I want to apply for it because there's a lot of non-monetary stuff that I can take advantage of. And that probably would, at this particular moment in time or my career path, this is what I need. So it's not really so much about the money. That is why I talked about the fact that look at the recurring expenses, and then obviously you can put a value to it. But do not go into an interview and just say to them, please make me an offer, because I believe you have a structured system in the place. So make me an offer and plot me wherever you feel my skill set fits. It just goes to show that you are not really prepared and you're not sure. But again, if you go in and you're very prepared and you say what you're expecting, but then you are open to negotiation because of the other bits that comes to it, that is a bit more acceptable. And even if they can't afford you, sometimes they can break the bank and get you in because they know what they're getting. Because I've seen people where I've seen clients where they've given us a budget, say 10,000 Ghana cedis as an example. And we presented as an exception, and we didn't convince, but obviously we had screened the person and we knew the person's value and their worth. And the person, the person was earning twice that amount, and they made him an offer. But then the way they structured the compensation was that they gave him money, but then they gave him other things like the shares and all the other things in the business. So then for that person, it made sense for them to be able to then offer, even though, they were being paid a lot more with regards to that. Sometimes you have people earn a lot, but it's all consolidated. So if there's something wrong with you, do not come to the company, because everything has been consolidated into the figure for you. So sometimes you see somebody's salary and you think, oh my God, this person's salary is so high. Padmon, thank you very much. This person's salary is so high. You don't know what is behind the scene, because it could be a consolidated figure that they've given you. But where you have the salary and the other non-monetary aspect, I would highly recommend that we go there, because we all know sometimes when things come in and you have medical insurance or you have something as an allowance or whatsoever, it cushions you really well. So of course the choice is yours, but I always recommend people that look at the whole package of it before, you make an offer with regards to that. So that is what I would say. Francis, thank you so much for your question. I'm not sure. I don't think there's any more questions here with regards to, okay, I think there isn't. So Padmon, thank you for joining. Misekia, thank you for joining. And Sobila, thank you for joining. If you have any more questions, please pop them in the chat box for me. I'll be happy to answer them. I hope you've been able to take a couple of tips from me for your next job application, where you walk in, you do your research in terms of the company for the interview, and then you get in there. You've also done your research on the salary aspect, and you can nail it like a pro. But before I go, please look out for an upcoming training, which I'm working on, or I'm going to be delivering on the 29th of July. So if you're an HR person, if you know somebody who is curious about HR, if you know someone who has an interest in human resources or doing a role or performing a role as an operations manager, but wants an insight into how HR works or how human resources work, coming in to learn a thing about how you can make an offer to a potential candidate as an HR person or whatsoever, please follow the link. We've actually posted quite a bit for today on that. I believe my colleague would also put the link in the chat box, and then you can review what we're going to be learning on that day. It's called the Get Start HR. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be exciting because it's very practical, and it's taking me back to my days of HR practice and how we started and what have you. So Jonathan, when you are already in a job and you find that your colleagues are on the same level, are earning more than you are, how do you go about asking for an increment? Okay. Jonathan, thank you for that question. So if you do find out that, your colleagues on the same level, are earning more than you do, there are a couple of things you can do. Okay. You can take opportunity during your performance review. So make sure that obviously the goals that you've set, you've achieved them. So during your, your performance review meeting, you can actually show the factual stuff of what you've done, and request for an increment if there's a possibility. Now, somebody may be on the same level as you, doesn't necessarily mean that you should be on the same salary with them, because it depends on the skill sets that they're coming in. It depends on the length of time they've been with the company. It depends on the other extra added values that they're bringing in. So look holistically within yourself. Are you performing the exact same role in terms of clientele you're managing, in terms of what you're doing? Are you doing exactly that? Has the person worked longer than you in terms of their work experience? Has the person worked within the business longer than you have? Perhaps the person has actually got quite a lot of experience behind their back, hence they negotiated well and was able to get that. But the best way to ask for an increment is doing a performance review meeting, because if you're able to show that you achieved your goals, if you're able to show that you can convince with the facts that you have, and don't go in stating stuff that you don't have facts to back it. It is always best to have facts to back your pay increment, and which is why I'm saying link it to your performance review. Then you can ask for an increment as a result of that. Sometimes people are on the same level, but there are different intricacies or there are different experiences and length of service that goes into their value. Or it could even be that they have a technical special area that you don't have. There are certain key jobs that even though they may be on the same level as you in terms of grading, their role is so technical and specialized that it requires them to be paid a little bit more than yourself. Padmont, I hope one of these days you educate us on composure. Okay, I will. I'll do a session on how to compose yourself in an interview. If it's an interview, please tell me, or is it in general with regards to how to compose yourself? And one of the tips I'll give you when you're going for an interview and you're nervous in terms of how to compose yourself, first of all, you have to really prepare very well. Prepare for the interview. Nowadays, a lot of people do the interviews using the competency style of interviewing, which will be another topic we'll talk about, because if I were to sit here and talk about that, we'll be here till the cows come home. So I would say to you that prepare very well in terms of doing your research about the role. Look at the job description properly. What are the things you've done in the past that you can use to show and support that you're competent in that particular role that you can submit? And if you are nervous, just when you go and there's a panel, look above their heads, because you try this at home, Padmont. If you look above somebody's head and you're talking to them, they will think that you're looking at them, but honestly, you're not. You're just looking at that, and then you would be able to see that. So that can calm your nerve. If it's a panel that is more than 2 or 3, where you see there's always one that you connect very well with. So where you see them, nodding, looking at you, saying all sorts, which is more positive, you keep looking in their direction. So you say a lot more here, then you come back. You say a lot more here, then you come back to the person. You say a lot more here, then you come back to the person. That's one of the tricks in terms of composure with regards to that. Okay. Thank you, Padmont. I've just given you some tips on the interviews, but please look out for, because of you, we're going to do another session on interviewing for success. Okay. I'm sure my team would be happy. They're always pulling me here to come and do stuff. So I'm sure they'll be happy. And then we can share some insights on how to, obviously compose yourself, especially when you're nervous. And it also is about sitting, the posture as well. It's also very important when you get in there. You're very welcome, Jonathan. Thank you very much for the comment. So, I believe my colleagues have actually, put, the link in there. Please share it. I'm looking forward to people who are interested in working or learning a bit about human resources. If you're very curious like I am, which is why I ended up in human resources, please join me and we'll have an amazing time together. Padmont, I hope it's been very helpful for you. So, I don't believe there are any more questions. It's Friday night. It's the weekend, wherever you are. I want to wish you a fantastic weekend. Keep safe. If you're on the trotro in Ghana going home and you're listening to me, make sure you do some self-care over the weekend. It's very important. Establish your boundaries because it keeps you sane and it keeps you at peace. So on that note, thank you very much everyone for joining us, and I wish you the very best and have a very good weekend. Take care.